Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Tonight, I'm joined by Chris McElwain and Kevin McCluskey, where we'll be talking about Celtic versus Dundee. There's another big game on tonight as well. And we'll be talking about the ramifications of that going one way or the other. Thank you, Chris, for looking after the bulletin for me today. I just felt that 5 was overkill, so I dropped out and I left it to you, Big Yogi, Wee Paddy and Young James. And it was a very enjoyable show, I've got to say. Welcome then, and I'm pretty sure you've seen the starting 11. We're going to dig right in about that. Chris, what's your initial thoughts on Brendan Rodgers starting 11 this evening? For anybody who's not seen it, I'll bring it up.
Yeah, well, my initial thoughts are that our belief about the leak was spot on. I can see a few people talking about it in the comments, and we sort of half joked, half discussed it earlier that we need to get to grips, or the club needs to get to grips with whoever's leaking these teams because, well, you probably say 8 or 9 times out of 10, it's not going to make a huge difference, certainly domestically. It is still potentially upsetting the manager's plans and giving the opposition a chance to tailor their lineup and their tactics to our team. So something a bit sinister about it, unfortunately. But from a football and performance point of view tonight, I mean, I think overall not too worried. I mean, Ralston's coming in for AJ. I mean, AJ's been on fantastic form, but I think I'm quite comfortable with the decision to protect him and manage him because he's going to be extremely important throughout the season. And Ralston generally comes in and is he's a sure hand. Well, he doesn't quite do the spectacular. He's generally one of these fairly steady players. So don't have too many concerns about that. Really delighted to see McCowan coming in and retaining his place. I think he earned that. And I think, again, it's something we've spoken about before. It's an opportunity where you don't have to rush a player like Calmack back. We can protect our captain a little bit, and McCowan seems to be stepping up and showing that he can do a job in that midfield. Engels coming in. I mean, I think Engels needs a bit of a confidence booster game. I think he's had a kind of purple patch, and then he's gone a little bit off the boil. That's understandable, given the move he's made and his age and time it takes to bed into the team. So, maybe an opportunity for him to come in and show what he can do under a little bit less pressure. Kyogo up front, I'll never have an issue with. But then we look at the wings. And this is a position or two positions that we've spoken about to death, I think, over the course of probably the past year. I think you've said it better than anyone, Paul John, that there seems to be a lack, or there has been a lack of trust in players like Yang and Palma, and that's usually evidenced by the fact that James Forrest has been, for both sides of the wing, he's been very much the second choice, with Palma and Yang, on the periphery. While I think it may leave us a little bit exposed defensively, and it definitely points to a lack of pace on the side that Palma's on in particular, you've got to view it as an opportunity for these guys and say, look, you're in the starting lineup. I think it's the first league game that they've started along with Ralston this season. They won't get a better chance. Right? With all due respect to Dundee, on paper, we should be more than a match for Dundee even with this lineup. But there's an opportunity there for Palma and Yang to go and make a little bit of a statement, that metaphorical chap in the manager's door to say, hey, I'm still here and I can still do a job for you. They've got to take it. Because I think if they don't perform in this game and you can't trust them domestically, where do they fit into this team?
Big thing for me is every single player within that core group, let's say 16 to 18 players, should be able to step in, not just in a game against Dundee, but in any domestic fixture. There might be one or two that you're a wee bit unsure of when you go into the Champions League. But Yang and Palma, I'm going to start off with them. We'll work through the entirety of the team. Kevin, I've seen them fairly recently against Sligo Rovers. And I know that Palma scored a hat-trick. But, I mean, one of the goals was down to the fact that Sligo Rovers were giving a 16-year-old a game near the end of the match. I think I'd have saved that one at the near post. For me, I've been hearing, but Palma is putting in the effort. I could pull anybody out of 60,000 Celtic fans from that stadium tonight who would put in effort, Kev. You need more than effort. And I think that it's one of the areas of the team that has been highlighted. The minute you have to rest anybody or if there's an injury, you see a drop in quality. So I said at the very start of the season for match day 1 that my two wingers for the start 11 when everybody's fit were Kuhn and Maeda. That was my take. It still is my take. I don't think Maeda's played brilliantly over the last couple of games. But then Yang and Palmer, yeah, you need a big performance from him. I know Chris was saying about Engels, but I think you need a big performance from Yang and Palmer. I can't remember the last time either of them have grabbed a game from, at any point and actually made a contribution that you would say, right, they changed the game. They were game changers. And that's what Celtic wingers have to be, Kev.
It is, and we've probably been spoiled over the years by wingers that have got that game-changing ability about them. Those two don't seem to have it. I'm struggling to think of a single game, even that Yang has really impacted and made a big impression on it. He's had moments in games, and I've been one of the people that's come out and made some bold statements about him at half-time in games when he's been getting the beating of his fullback, and then the second 45 minutes he disappears. He's definitely got something about him. He's got a wee bit trickery and directness in his play, but he's never really been able to dominate a game from the wings. And if the guy he kind of replaced, Jota, that's what he used to do all the time.
Yeah.
So he had big shoes to fill. He's definitely not managed to do it. And tonight's another one of those games where you go, he needs to stand up and deliver and do something. But I think we sat for games last season and said, this is Yang's last chance. And he's got another last chance tonight, possibly, to prove himself. He's the biggest surprise for me coming in. I would have thought if we're resting wingers, we'll rest one from the start and the other one at the hour mark. And I'd have brought in Palmer because Forrest could play either side if it was Maeda that was dropping out. Palmer's got a lot of things to do as well, a lot of fans to turn. He maybe does give you effort, but like you say, there's 60,000 folk in that stadium tonight that you can pull any one of them out and they'll give you that minimum requirement of giving it their all. We've seen flashes of brilliance from Louis Palmer, but again, he's another one that flatters to deceive. So it'll be really interesting to see what the two of them can do. Massive game for them both. And I know I'll probably sound a bit negative talking about them in that way. I'll be the first one to cheer when either of them score or set up a goal. I've got to support them throughout this 90 minutes, but it's a big call from Brendan to bring both of them in for this game, especially when you consider what's going on in the other game tonight. A win for us it's massive. If the two of them drop points, it's a strange one for me that he's dropped, or not dropped, rested both Forrest and Maeda from the starting 11, and I'll be really curious to see just how Yang and Palmer live up to the expectation that will be on them.
I think, though, my biggest issue is having a raft of changes, because we've seen it against Falkirk in a league below us, and they gave us a fright, and we had to get some of the big boys back into the frame to win us the game, and we won it comfortably in the end. But they gave us a wee fright, and I think Tony Docherty. I know that the side came to Celtic Park last season, we absolutely trounced them. But he's a good gaffer. He's done really, really well with Dundee. He'll have that side shaped up. He'll be looking at Palmer and Yang, and he'll realise that there isn't the same defensive qualities in those two wingers that we have in the likes of Maeda or James Forrest or even Nicholas Kuhn. And I'm wondering, the challenge on Ida was the one that everybody was focusing on at the weekend, but it was followed up by another scything of Kuhn. And I'm wondering if they've actually taken out two players in one go, and both of them are missing tonight. But for me, it does highlight. I'm not going to give every player who comes in a half time and all that. What it does is it highlights the fact, and we said this the other day, I think it was Monday, we asked him that we need to strengthen the wingers and we need to strengthen up top, even just for quality in terms of your second or your third choice. Because, listen, they've got a platform tonight. How many times are they going to be given that? I wasn't impressed with them in the bounce game against Sligo Rovers, and I think Dundee are a higher calibre of side. Let us know in the comment section what you think of tonight's discussion points. We're going to be talking about the midfield, the defence, and of course the man up top who has no backup now. Absolutely no backup. And when Kevin was talking there, Chris, he said stand up and deliver. I thought we were getting a wee bit of the old Adam and the Ants vibe from the 1980s. And on that point, first album I ever bought was Kings of the Wild Frontier. by Adam and Jan.
Fantastic.
But seeing how we're talking about the 80s guys, there is a gig coming up, just announced a couple of hours ago. A Celtic State of Mind will be joined by Roy Aitken, Pat Bonner, and Peter Grant, all on the same stage at Barra's Art and Design. It's a Christmas night out. It's got an 80s vibe because I'm an 80s kid. That's my age. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there's a few years out there who would love to see those three on a stage. Chris, over 1,500 games for Celtic between the three of them. Astonishing, eh?
They were my, sticker book alumni. Obviously, the Panini sticker books. That was it. Big Paddy Bonner, Roy Aitken. I mean, I think I've told you the story about Roy Aitken and a few of the other Celtic players jogging past me, and I think Peter Grant was one as well. And in Strathclyde Park, when I was just a really little guy, and they gave me a kind of wave and a thumbs up as I was walking past my dad with my Celtic tracksuit on, late 80s, early 90s tracksuit on. But yeah, a brilliant lineup. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be at an event with Peter Grant, met him, and he's a guy who honestly had me and my good lady in tears backstage just with the stories he was telling. These were stories he couldn't even tell on stage. So you know what you're getting with Granty. Listen to Pat Bonner all the time on a radio channel that we mentioned, but he's generally you can tell where his heart lies and his allegiance lies. He's a top guy, and he's probably the most. I think certainly historically he's a goalkeeper I most associate with Celtic. Just Paddy Bonner, Packy Bonner, Big Packy. It was just what a keeper and a character, and Roy Aitken, absolute captain, legend. They're just part of that team. So yeah, I might have to look at my old centenary top for that one.
Yeah, feed the bear. Ticket link underneath the video. Stephen Winning comes in to say you can't write off players until they get their chances for a few games. We nearly lost Calmac for that thinking. 5-0 tonight. I think that's a completely different scenario. These two players have been at Celtic for 18 months. They've not made an impact. I mean, Palma in his early games had a good return in terms of goals and assists. We've seen him scoring in the Champions League. Has he fallen off the radar? Yes, he has. He absolutely has. I mean, he came on in the semi-final last season of the Scottish Cup, didn't follow instructions, and we lost a goal as a result of his poor possession. He lost the ball. Very, very poor at defending. The only way that they can get to a point, Stephen, where they're named in the lineup and you're quite happy with it is through performing. And they've not performed this season. Yang, I remember the 3-3 game at Ibrox, going back to there, and he's done nothing since then to change my mind, where for me, he wasn't brave enough. He wasn't brave enough. He was cowardly when it came to a Rangers attack. They scored their equaliser, and it was 3-3. And at that point, the margin was so tight. And I think that at that point, it was pretty obvious that Brendan Rodgers didn't trust him either because he wasn't playing after that game. Palma hasn't featured. So he needs to do it with performances. And until he does that, I think as football fans, you're allowed to say, I'm not sure about the two guys starting, especially on a night like tonight where the repercussions of the results going our way tonight, Kevin. I listened to the bulletin like many of us earlier on today, and I was thinking about the repercussions because what I'm looking at, right, is Aberdeen, I think, are challenging for second place. They're obviously, only second virtue of the goal difference at the moment to Celtic. They are challenging for second place this season. And in terms of ramifications, the way that I look at that is that it can throw Scottish football upside down if Aberdeen come second in the league. What I mean by that is they will then be looking towards a Champions League place. Now, can you imagine? There's no guarantee. It's difficult for teams to get through the qualifiers. Of course it is. Bratislava, how many games did they play? 8, something like that, 4 rounds to get through. That's how difficult it is to get into the group stages. I get it. But you imagine coming into January and Aberdeen still being within touching distance of second position and their board of directors showing a bit of ambition and bringing in 2 or 3 players. By the way, it's not easy to bring 2 or 3 players in a January. I get that. And really pushing for that second place, Kevin. Tonight's a massive part of that because in terms of momentum, you look at the week that Scottish football's had, right? Celtic are firing on all cylinders. We've got a great performance and point in the Champions League. We go out there and we get a result at the weekend, fairly comfortable. We'll go in tonight and let's hope we get a result. You look at the bounce that Aberdeen have got, unbeaten this season and, coming into tonight's game, at Pittodrie against Rangers. A lot of people are writing them off. And then you look at the background of what's happening at Rangers right now, with the fact that, you know, various heads of department are vacant at the football club, which straight away rings alarm bells. You think, what in hell's going on there? Are they just jumping from a sinking ship? And then the financials are revealed yesterday to be really worrying for any football side. And the fact that you then accumulate the losses up to 126 million quid in the last 12 years, you think to yourself, where's that football club going? I said it today because it wasn't Chris who wrote the tagline. It was me. I just threw him under the bus. This could be the mother of all meltdowns tonight, Kev. If Celtic get a victory and Aberdeen win at Pittodrie, the mother of all meltdowns is going to be running for days and weeks, and it's momentum, isn't it? Because the way that Scottish football works, it's almost as if you can't have one or the other. It's right, everything's good and rosy in the garden for Celtic, which means that there's a crisis going on at Ibrox, right? But they have fed into that with the poor financial mismanagement, suicidal financial mismanagement. If they lose a football game tonight and we beat Dundee, honestly, it's going to be catastrophic for them.
Absolutely, and I hope it is. Make no bones about that. I'll have a half an eye definitely on what's going on at Pittodrie, because for 90 minutes I'm going to be a part-time Aberdeen supporter tonight, I think, because I really, really want to see them win. Because, like you say, it could absolutely bury Rangers if they do it. You mentioned that Aberdeen could be in touching distance of second place if they win tonight, like going into January. They'll be within touching distance of first place, you know, and that's great. You know, the papers can ram their old splitting the old firm line if they want, you know, because like Sean was saying at the weekend, they're not finishing above us. Like, we're not finishing third, so they're going to push us, I think, for the title to a certain level. I think in the end we'll be too strong, and if Aberdeen can win tonight, they've got a great chance of being second. Now, if they do, like you say, with the losses that Rangers have been making over the last decade or so that they've been in existence, they cannot continue at that rate. They've got the highest wage bill in Scottish football. That will need to go. They won't have European football, or not to any great level. Their income this season will be less, or this year will be less than last year anyway, because of the European competition that they're in. And, you know, they'll make bigger losses. Tonight's game could end them completely. Not to be too dramatic about it or anything, but this could be like a real defining night for Scottish football history if Aberdeen are to win it, because there's very slim chance of Rangers ever coming back from that. Certainly this season, and you would say over the next couple of seasons as well, they'll be a busted flush, which is fantastic.
Well, the big thing is, and what they're kind of pinning all their hopes on, is some massive investment from an individual who's maybe supported Rangers since their first incarnation. So let's have a wee look at some of the comments coming through. Franny Weldon, surprised Kuhn isn't involved at all. What's the update? Was there an update on an injury today during the presser in relation to Kuhn? I'm surprised as well, because the stat I was looking at, which I thought was tremendous, obviously came on as a sub at the weekend and set up another goal. He is now averaging a goal or an assist every 60 minutes this season. That's unbelievable. That's like Jota levels of contribution. It's brilliant. Feed the bear, says St. Og. And by the way, feed the bear indeed. The guy is brilliant. Loves a bit of the crack. And, you know, he's still the captain. You can see the players that they still treat him like the captain when they're in his presence. And I'm really looking forward to a proper 80s night. I'm not saying you have to dress up like it's the 80s, but I'm going to have a playlist.
I usually do it.
Me too. I've still got the hairdo and everything. That's never changed. Here we go. Palma has a cent for goals difference between him and Maida. He's shown that DSTO, and even when he came on against Atalanta, I think there was a ball that he played, and it was another reminder that he's got technique, he's got technical ability. He played the ball into Kyogo, which was brilliant. It's a fantastic ball. And I'm not denying that he's got technique and ability. You wouldn't be at Celtic if you didn't. But there's a lot more that you have to For me, showing a consistent basis if you want to play in a winning side. Opinionated Glaswegian, the OG says if we can win comfortably with that amount of changes, it shows the strength and depth. This was something Brendan done in his invisible season, and Donny Tiny Hands, hopefully the changes won't come back to bite Rodgers. Ewan Boy Martin says, with CCV at the back in defence, I am very calm about tonight. There was another one coming in here. Here we go. I fancy Palma and Yank to play well tonight. Joseph, I hope they do. But you've got to remember, like this time last season, we were still persevering. Rodgers was still persevering, Chris, with Mikey Johnson, for example. It's what we've got, so we've got to use it. I don't think for a moment they're Brendan's signings. I know they came in that summer when Brendan joined. I don't think that was the kind of level that he was looking for. I really do hope. I'm not going to spend another moment, doubting them. I hope they play well tonight. But on the point that you made in relation to Cameron Carter-Vickers, it is great to have him back in. And we said that it would be nice to see how he partners Trusty, because it means Trusty's playing on his preferred side, Chris. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Scalesy getting a rest on the bench.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, when Trusty was signed, I always thought there was an element of that, the fact that he might be a natural partner for Carter-Vickers. But the downside to that is that you've got Scales, who's more than earned the right to the jersey. Tonight, I would view it purely as a rest. I don't think Scales' place should be under threat in any way, shape or form. But you've got this price tag over Trusty, which, I know representative in a wider market, 6 million is not a huge outlay. But for us, in recent years it is. And you would expect that to be reflected by the player being on the park. Ultimately, I just hope they play well together, because I think you need 3, an absolute minimum, and preferably 4 really strong centre-backs. I always think you should have 2 consistent partners. So you should have, in our case, it might be Carter-Vickers and Trusty. Then you look for Scales, another, or switching them about. But the point is that you always want to have. I think centre-backs thrive on strong partnerships and strong understanding, and they should complement each other. And I think Carter-Vickers is a player who probably complements just about every partner he plays alongside. But I think it'll be interesting to see tonight whether Trusty and him have a natural understanding, if Trusty's game really ups, a couple of levels by playing on that left-hand side. But I think, we have to be fair to Scales. Scales has come through, a ton of scrutiny, probably a ton of pressure, stepped up to a situation that he wasn't expecting last year, and is, I think, more than earned the right to be the current custodian of the first team jersey. But ultimately, you want competition. Competition's healthy. It's good. And if we've got, by the end of this match, for example, if we've got a bit of confidence that we've got 3 really strong centre backs, it's not a bad thing, is it?
It's brilliant. And this is not a case of picking on anyone. I mean, this is the thing with regards to football players, and as fans, we've done it for generations. We've done it on the pages of fanzines. We've done it in supporters' buses and in pubs after the game. You've done it at your work. There's certain players who simply not at the same level as others. And I think that there is nothing that Palmer's shown this season to suggest that he's going to give us the same type of an impact as Maeda or James Forrest has done. And I think that, the reason I'm saying it is based on the fact that he's not really been playing. So it's not just me that thinks it. The football department at Celtic obviously think it. And it's not about picking on anybody. It's just, observing the performance of the individual. Will the game be lost and won on the wings? Well, maybe, because if we don't create chances, we kind of stagnated about this time last season where, some of the games we were playing, we were creating nothing. I remember that game against Hearts, the 2-0 game. It was like I know as cliched as it sounds, we could have played all week and we were never going to create a chance and score a goal. A massive part of that was down to the wingers. So it's not about picking anybody out individually and saying they're not good enough. If we want to progress as a football club, I think in January we need to look at the wings and we need to look at the situation up top, because the minute Kyogo or Reeder's injured, then you've got no real option. The other one plays, and then you're looking at Maeda as a backup. Opinionated Glaswegian, heavy Dennis the Menace, Barnett, PJ, buddy. I was more of a fan of Roger the Dodger. I was a big fan of Roger the Dodger.
Roger the Dodger.
Although Dennis the Menace obviously was the kind of cover star. He was the poster boy for the Beano, wasn't he?
Roger the Dodger, we seen one of the Rangers execs at one point, no?
Probably, mate. Aye. You and Boy Martin comes back in. Maybe the last chance saloon for Young and Palmer to prove that they are Celtic class. I think they're in the same scenario as Mikey Johnson, where he's at the football club. Rodgers will get as much as he possibly can out of them whilst they're here. But I think medium term, if we get an offer and we've got backup, then they'll be on their way. Joseph McGonigal, because of what happened with Falkirk, maybe some are getting worried. I believe BR knows these lads and trusts them. I agree, Joseph, insofar as we should have a pool of 16 to 18 players that can overcome Dundee, Falkirk, Ross County, and just about anybody else in the league. We've got to get to that point. Love it, you're back in. Too many changes for my liking. I agree with you. Should have played his strongest squad till we lead comfortably, and then obviously give them a rest. And Jungle Lion has got one eye on another game tonight. The hierarchy know they have to stay in this title race. Expect hocus pocus tonight, says Jungle Lion. And hopefully, Jungle Lion, you're able to watch that game, and we can maybe get a video from your incredible man den on Manhut out the back of your garden. I need to ask you guys then, we're going to be bringing up the Dundee team line as well, just to see how they're going to be lining up, and here it is. And the poster boy is Simon Murray, I think. So here we go. Let's get rid of that comment so we can see it a little bit clearer. McCracken, Ingram, Robertson, Astley. Astley. Rick Astley. There's a right 80s vibe coming in here, Chris. I know you were a big fan of Rick Astley.
Mulligan, I was not a big fan of Rick Astley.
You were a massive fan. I've seen the video. Right, Mulligan, Cameron, Murray, Robertson, Larkesh, Silla, and is it Portales or Portales? Kevin McCluskey. Is it Portales? There we go. On the bench for Dundee, Sharp, Meggie, Main, Adewumi, Kumitio, Braybrook, Palmer, Holden, and Vetro. And yes, my eyesight is terrible. That's why I was crunching up my eyes. Who do you see as the danger men in there tonight? Kev McCluskey, always love throwing you a wee low bowler, mate.
You do, and usually I've got Sean on the match days to dig me out when I say I don't really know. But I'll say the poster boy himself, Simon Murray, is probably the biggest goal threat that Dundee will have, and that's why he's on that picture. And then I think Lyle Cameron's a fairly decent player at number 10. But to be fair, I look at that Dundee team, it's not one that puts the fear in me in any way, shape, or form. There's a lot of names in there that are not overly familiar to me. There's not very many players that stand out as being big threats. I do think as well the name Silla has been bandied around a bit as maybe being a threat for Dundee. But I mean, I look at that team and I'll do the thing I'll always do. I'll compare it against the Celtic one, and man for man, we're the better team. And I think we should be looking at this as being a fairly comfortable 3 points, despite the number of changes, which I don't think I would have made as many, but I still think the team that's going out there is good enough to win. Yeah. And to use the Falkirk game as that example, it's now every match day you have to use the squad, the full squad. So if the starting 11 isn't winning it, by the hour mark, we're looking at a bench tonight that's got Rio Hatate, James Forrest, Dyson Maida, right? There's real attacking strength in that bench. If we need it, we can call on them. So pretty confident that we should be strong enough to do a number on this Dundee side.
It's good to see Francis Turley on the bench again, Chris. He was a player that we watched during the pre-season. Obviously, he showed up well, and he was given that new contract. So it is good. I mean, we were talking, or I heard one of you saying earlier about the lack of minutes some of the young guys have been getting since they left Celtic. Kelly, Vata. You could probably throw Boss and Lowell into that mix as well. Yeah. So it is good. It's good to see Turley. But special mention for Luke McCowan, of course. He gets his first start of the weekend, and he's starting against his former club tonight.
Yeah, and well earned. I think McCowan for me. We've had to eat a little bit of humble pie since the signing was announced, and I think he's proven a lot of people wrong with his performances and his attitude and his ethic. And a young guy like Turley being in and around the squad. What a great example to see someone like Luke McCowan coming in, taking his chance, and really showing the attitude and the mentality to perform at at our club, and that's a huge thing. And I know it's early days for McCowan; he's still got a long way to go, and I'm sure he'll suffer the odd form dip, as every player does. But since he's come into the club, he's doing absolutely everything right, and he is a relatively senior player in terms of his age and his tenure. Big part of the Dundee team that had so much success last season, so they'll be feeling his absence. But I just think you get a young, really promising player like Turley. Great to see him in the squad. Would love to see him get minutes if we got the game to a position where we could afford to bring him on, and give him an opportunity to see what he can do. But he's got to look at a player like McCowan and say, okay, he's demonstrating what it takes to come in and make an impact at this club. And I've been in and around this club, and I know what it's going to, what it's like, and who the people are, and what I need to do in press and manager. So it's a good example for Turley to follow. So we'd love to see him get on the park tonight, but I think he'll benefit from the experience, even if he is on the bench. Again, just so frustrating seeing so many young players with perceived promise leaving a club before they take the opportunity or they get the opportunity. And Turley's one I would like to see buck that trend and actually get some meaningful minutes, meaningful game time, and go on and have a cracking career.
I hope so, mate. Let's go to the action then, and we'll be back at half-time as always, and full-time. Hopefully we'll get a good 45 minutes under our belt. Minutes applause for Tommy Tids Callaghan tonight as well. Rest in peace, Tommy. Very sadly left us earlier on in the week. Thoughts and prayers with his friends and family. Join us at half-time, and thank you once again for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.